Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, I was one of the many New Zealanders who unfortunately believed the hype that led up to this Prime Minister's statement. I thought we were going to have a grand plan. We were going to have a big shift in the approach of the government, and I thought we were going to have progress. Frankly, from a political point of view, I was quite anxious about the possibilities from this statement. But what happened, Mr Speaker? We found that National had no plan to increase wages. National has no plan to create jobs. What they've decided to do is to fall back to their old approach and to have tax cuts for the rich paid for by the poor. What we want, Mr Speaker, is a system which is fair, one where people who are on the average wage will get a real benefit from it. But as outlined more to the media than in this House by Mr Key yesterday, no one on an average or a below average wage, $48,000 or below, will be affected by his drop in the top rate of tax. No one will be affected and no one will benefit. But the Prime Minister will get $509 a week, but just on the pocket money that he gets from Parliament. Not on his real income. He'll get much more on his real income, but on the PIN money that he gets, from his parliamentary job, he will get $509 a week. And if you happen to be head of Telecom, $2,500 a week. $2,500 a week. And Mr Speaker, it depends, Mr Speaker, on when you listen to what John Key says, what he does say. What he said last year, he was asked very directly about a hike in GST. He said, quote, "National is not going to be raising GST. Full stop. National wants to cut taxes, not raise taxes. Full stop." Then he went on to say, a national government, if it was doing a half-decent job, wouldn't need to raise GST. If National was doing a half-decent job, says John Key, they wouldn't have to raise GST. And then yesterday we had the Prime Minister misleading again. The Prime Minister misleading again when he said that New Zealand taxes consumption at a relatively low rate. That's what he said. He did. New Zealand taxes consumption at a relatively low rate, says John Key. So I thought, oh, this is interesting. Let's try and find out what does that mean. Let's have a look at like countries. Let's have a look at the OECD. Now, 30 countries are reported in the latest OECD report. It was tabled and published in 2009. It goes up to 2008. 30 countries there. And if we were relatively low, I would have thought we'd be in the bottom 10. You know, the bottom 10, yes, the member for Napier nods. He says we'd be in the bottom 10 if we were relatively low as well. And I thought, I was looking for us. I was on the chart, I was trying to find us, couldn't find us. But I had to go all the way up to number 6, Mr Speaker. We are the 6th highest consumption taxed country in the OECD out of 30. Are we relatively low? No. Of course not. It's just another misleading statement from the Prime Minister. So already we hit our poor much harder than most other countries, and what he is proposing to do is to put it up. Mr Speaker, we already pay as a percentage, as a proportion of our GDP, 110% more than Australia. We pay 110% more. We pay 8.4% of our GDP in consumption tax, and Australia is 4.0. So what's the story? He is the person who promised that we would have equality with Australia. He is the person who said that is the objective for New Zealand. And what have we now? We have Dr. Bollard, who I think everyone in this House believes before they believe the Prime Minister saying that is not possible with this government settings. That is not possible with this government settings. Mr. Speaker, so what do we have? We have a Prime Minister who is clearly bored with the job. He's got a pile of mates who are high income, and he's saying, how could we possibly help our mates with the poor income, and what progress can we do relatively quickly to do what is rapidly out in Wainuiomata being labelled a Sheriff of Nottingham approach. What he is doing, I was in Wainuiomata this morning. Does the member remember the way to Hutt South? He hasn't been to his office for a long time. Mr. Speaker, I was in Wainuiomata this morning. That was a member who promised to shift to Hutt South, and he still lives in Roseneath. He promised to shift to Hutt South, and he still lives in Roseneath.
Point of order. The member, in fact, has made a false accusation against me.
That's not a point of order. The member knows that. Call the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, when's he shifting to Hutt South? Or at least when's he going to get a GPS to help him find his way out to the Hutt Valley when he's wandered out there, rather than getting lost on the way to the meetings in the way that he always does and not turning up in the way that he promises? Mr. Speaker, he can interject on me. Yeah, but not with a mirror. He has his meetings with a mirror. That's what he does. He looks at himself in the mirror, he preens himself, and he says he's had a meeting. That's Paul Quinn. Well, Hekia says he's not the sharpest pencil in the House. I agree with him. I agree with Hekia Parada.
Point of order, Hekia Parada.
Mr. Speaker, I'm being deliberately misquoted. I said that the member was good looking, not that he wasn't as sharp a pencil as Allegro.
The member knows that that is a debatable point and it's not a point of order. I call the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, I would like for part of my speech to focus on the Minister of Education, Anne Tolling. And I asked her a question today about whether she was in the 11.9% who claim to fully understand her standard system, or in the 88% who admit that they don't. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to make it very clear. I am with John Hattie. I am with Lester Flockton. I am with just about every assessment academic in the country. And I accept that I don't understand what's in her mind to do with the assessment system. No one understands how it's going to work. And the reason is that a whole pile of the work hasn't been done on it yet. Mr. Speaker, John Hattie was very clear. The most able kids will suffer. So what are we doing? That is the government who's taken away gifted and talented education, and now what they are doing is focusing the curriculum down so the brightest kids will suffer the most as a result of this. This is so badly designed that John Hattie said to the Prime Minister, scrap it and start again. Mr. Speaker, I support high standards. I put, as Minister of Education, well over $10 million into developing Astle. That produced... Is that all, he says? Around the world people come to look at Astle. Mr. Speaker, it is the best system in the world. It is working well. It produces really good reports for parents. And if someone could read them to Paul Quinn, he would understand them.
I call to order